All right, so quick review of what we touched on yesterday was these three C's of the pitch: your credibility, your charisma, and your connection. Your connection with the audience, your connection with the material, your content, and how you connect your audience to your material. We're going to focus now, as we point towards self-authored storytelling, we're going to focus on this charisma aspect. We had a really rich philosophical discussion yesterday about what is the self, ultimately. How is it constructed, and particularly when it comes to this idea of a mask that we wear, this persona that we construct, especially when you're in a situation like this where you are suddenly speaking in front of a large group of people. That's when the mask tends to come on pretty quickly, and it's hard to take that off. So we're going to do an investigation into where your charisma comes from by way of storytelling. I will say this: I am flown all over the world to work with teams, multinational teams, global organizations, and they understand what I'm there to do is to help them with their presentations. Help me with my presentation. And what that looks like a lot of times, they're like, help me just fix my slide deck. Just get the slide deck fixed. The problem has usually nothing to do with the slide deck. It has to do with their presence in the room. And what that has to do with is how comfortable are they being themselves. How comfortable you are being yourself has so much to do with the story you are telling yourself about yourself. And that story has been slowly being written all through your life. Experiences you have, things that people tell you about yourself that you either take in and believe or refute. Stories are what make human beings human beings. They're so much a part of how we live and how we think. Stories are our oldest technology for making meaning. There's even a theory that language, human language, first evolved so that we could tell one another stories. And we have evolved with stories along the way. They're so much a part of us that our brain wants to turn almost everything into a story. For example, I think it was out of Stanford, where they constructed this. It was like a video game that you didn't play but you watched. They had this image come up of a rectangle and a bunch of geometric figures, and the geometric figures would chase one another around. The square, the triangle, and the circle would go inside the big box, and then outside they'd swirl around, and then afterwards they'd turn to the people and say, so what's going on here? And everybody had a different story. They're like, well, the square's the boss, the circle is an underperforming employee, no, the square's the father, and the circle's the daughter. Everybody put their own story on what was essentially a random bit of nothingness that had no meaning. Here's the thing about humans. We like things to make meaning. We like things to make sense. And when they don't make sense, we will make them make sense by the use of story. So right now we're going to investigate how stories work, how the kind of stories that you are drawn to, and what that might mean about how you can unlock your full potential. Here's another thing that makes amazing stories amazing. When you're listening to a talk, a pitch, a presentation, whatever the case may be, if I share data with you, just the numbers, just the statistics, I'm only lighting up one part of your brain, the part that is responsible for processing data. But when I give you that same data in the shape of a narrative structure or story, I light up more parts of your brain. And I can also create what is called a kinesthetic experience, where you actually feel it in your body. Here are words that no one ever said. Honey, I saw the most amazing PowerPoint slide today. The hairs on my neck literally stood up. Said no one ever. But if you come home and say, I wait till you hear this story I heard today, you're not going to believe it. You understand the difference between the two. So this is where engagement is. Good. So think about your fictional story, and we're going to use a similar filter to look at your meaningful stories. So everyone has your fictional story in mind? Yes? Is there anyone who's still thinking about it? Just so I know. Well, that's a high number of people. What are you going to do?
To bring in yesterday?
Yes. Yeah, movie, book. Yeah, the movie, a play, a novel, a short story. Something else fictional? Try to find one now. Just pick a movie. For the rest of you who chose something that is meaningful for you, what is the story about? Who is the character? And you want paper and pen. And I advocate for paper and pen as opposed to a device because it's a different experience.
Reads paper.
If I remember correctly, I think earlier in the week you did an exercise where you articulated all the different roles that you have in your life. Is that right? Something where you post-it noted something?
We haven't done roles in life, but within teams.
Within teams.
Yeah. And they built these little personas that you guys have kind of revisited.
Great. Same principle applies in your life. You have all these different roles. Son, daughter, brother, sister, cousin, student, learner, entrepreneur, whatever the case may be. Athlete, runner, swimmer, all the different roles that you have in your life. Think about the character, the main character in your story, the fictional story that you chose. What role does that character have in the story? So for example, let's pick a case study. Let's pick something like, all right, who's seen the film Inside Out by Pixar? That's a fair number of people. So Ian saw it twice. Our protagonist, the young girl, what are some of the roles that she has in her life?
Daughter.
She's a daughter.
She's
She's a player. She's a hockey player.
Student.
She's a student. Those are three different roles. When it comes to the story itself, what role is where the emotional experience and the meaning of the story really plays out? Daughter. So that's the role that we would pick in order to find the meaning. So take a moment and think about why the story is meaningful for you. Why did you pick this story? As you think, resonance. When something resonates, it's very much like this. Resonance. A chord has been struck. When you hear a story about someone and it moves you or it hits you in a certain way, that's resonance. It resonates with you. You're going to have a very brief discussion in pairs about your first guess. This is just an intuitive, creative process. Why do you think the story that you chose resonates for you? We're just tilling the soil here, so there are no wrong answers, and here's the good news. There are no right answers. It's just an intuitive discussion. So resonance. So, who talked about resonance without telling their partner what their story is? Oops, that's okay, it's all good. Tell me about that experience. What was it like to talk about why the story resonates for you, but without giving the story away? Avery.
It was more about like the actual character and the personality and kind of how you relate to them as opposed to like the plot, I guess, of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it was based on character and personality, which was really interesting.
Yep, and I would add, it's also often about your interpretation of the character. So it reveals more about you than it does necessarily about the character or the story. Amir.
I was just going to say, yeah, none of it, like the story doesn't matter, just how you take it.
There's a powerful notion tucked in here, which can be very beneficial to living a good life as a good person, which is we can take this and apply it to pretty much every person we meet. Meaning, the human struggle is universal. The plot details of someone else's life really don't matter. It's just that we're both struggling. We're both going after something and meeting that resistance somewhere. What else? What was this experience like to talk about resonance?
I think it helped me identify pieces of myself by seeing them in somebody else.
Yeah.
It allowed introspection. It's hard to just sit down and be like, I'm going to think about my characteristics.
Right.
What are my flaws?
Oh, I see. So it's almost a way of working it out through a character.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Okay, great. Yeah, lovely. What else?
I never really thought of why it resonated with you. I always thought I liked the story for its like aesthetic about the actual story. I didn't realize that.
That's really cool.
That's really cool. And so earlier I said this is the way to make sure you're living with intentional, a meaningful life, is stopping and saying, wait, what is meaningful for me? Not just waiting for someone else to tell you or to find it on social media. Just what resonates for me? What lights me up? And then choosing those things in your life.
I think it's interesting that a lot of things that resonate with me or what I find with other people isn't like the similarities that you find within characters. Usually it's like really, really stark differences more than anything. I think it's just like the polarization of saying, wow, someone can be that different but still like be the same kind of person, the same kind of human. I think that's like really resonating.
Can you say, have you had that experience in real life as well? Would you just share with me about like what the relationship is like before and what the relationship is like after?
I think it's like just like in like a personal level with like other people.
Sure.
Or just
whenever you've had that experience.
I think it's like in that sense, like it's the stark. Like I think when I read it, like it's a little different, like talking to someone versus like reading, especially when it's a self-written autobiography. In that sense, you're like entering their thoughts more than what they personify as themselves. When I talk to other people, it's like interesting. I think it's like I see more of the similarities instead of the differences, and like you see like differences in upbringings and backgrounds, but way more of like, wow, we're both still people, and like you have like completely different upbringings or completely different interests, but we still like enjoy having fun, or we like just have like the same kind of humor.
Yeah.
When I read people's thoughts, I think it's like totally different. It's like, wow, I never knew you thought like that, or like when you see a situation, you see it totally different than I.
Yeah. It's very intimate. It's a very intimate experience, getting to read people's thoughts. Yeah. Great. All right. And that's just step one. This is a story about a character and how that resonates with me. But the story hasn't really begun yet until the obstacle, or the goal is articulating the obstacles in the way. So this is a story about a role, who was the character, who wanted what? This is where things get a little tricky, especially if it's a movie, because movies got a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of things going on, so it can be hard to articulate, okay, what does this person really, really want? Is there anyone who saw the movie Brooklyn? Okay, any of the young, yeah. We'll talk about that later. I think of another example. So for your story, brainstorm first. What are all the options that you think this character wants? Do that in writing. If it's clear for you, that's great. If it's very obvious and clear what they wanted, that's helpful. But what are some of the things that you're aware of this character wanting? Okay, take a look at your list of options that you came up with. And remember yesterday morning when we talked about what is the what of your work and what is the what of your work really all about? The same distinction applies here. The character might want a cookie, or the cookie could represent something larger in the story. So ask yourself as you go back to your list and decide what obstacle resonates for you, what does the character really, really want? What is this story really about? And let that question guide the choice that you make. And here's the good news. You can't get it wrong, and you can't get it right. And finally, story is conflict. If there's no conflict, there's not really much of a story. I think there's even a quote early on in The Hobbit about how, when times are good and the food is fine and there's no worries, they really don't make good stories. But when the Shire is on fire, the story is pretty good. That's when things start happening. So, what is the obstacle in the way of your character's goal? Again, if it's not clear, brainstorm a few options.
Yeah.
Great. So, this is a story about a
lost soul.
Nice. This is just an instinct, what might be causing the problem is that's a little...
Possibly. I can share that.
It's abstract. So what's the role? What is the role that this person has?
He is one of the protagonists. So the story circulates around him and one other character.
Okay.
And he discovers more knowledge and power, and that leads to dark places.
Okay, I think I know this story perhaps, maybe.
Well,
Or the root.
the root.
Okay, good. So let's pause, have a meta moment. When someone shares with you what story is meaningful for them, you're already starting to get what is important to them. Knowledge is important to Mr. H. Would you agree? So we're already listening. When someone tells a story to you, they're giving you the blueprint to their mind and heart. All you have to do is listen. That's a value. Great. So is there a role that you and this person have in common?
A role that we share.
That you both have had at one point or another?
Yeah, this character he's not exactly a teacher, but he is a guide for other people in the story.
So an educator or a guide?
Yeah, at various points, not at the beginning.
Okay.
Which I think may be one of the important pieces.
If I said this is a story about a guide, is that the word you used?
Yeah, guide.
Does that feel okay? Well, feel free to change it. I'm just looking for a noun. I'm looking for something concrete.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay, we can change it. So this is a story about a guide who wants what?
Wants to make meaning of the world.
Wants to make meaning of the world, but
This gets into those dark places that I mentioned earlier. Knowledge comes at a price.
okay, good. We're already jumping to the meaning. So that's where we're going. Good. What happens in the story where's the creative tension start?
He makes a sacrifice that he's not fully aware of the consequences.
Aha. Okay. Okay.
He doesn't
So
understand.
if I think I know the story, and I can't wait to talk to you about this. Is it more that, but he charges ahead before he knows what the fine print is?
Yeah, I think I would say that.
Okay, and that's what causes the problem.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I see some confusion. Talk to me. What's going on? What are you curious about? Poe, give word to your thoughts.
I don't know how to put when it begins and when it...
Oh, we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, I don't have any questions right now.
Okay, cool.
I think
Good.
it's pretty-
So, with your partner, you're going to do what Mr. Mr. H just did. You have objectivity, they do not. They're inside the story, partially. You as a partner can be objective and outside of it. You're going to try and get them to be specific and clear about what is the goal, who is the character's role, what is the obstacle, what is the goal, what is the obstacle. Same partners. This should be easy. Just rattle it off, and if not, we'll come and clarify. You have, even if you think you don't, you have enough material to move forward. I know we're working quickly, but we're going to continue to return to this structure as we try to find stories that might even work in your pitch. Cool. So, before we do that, we're going to look at what is the meaning. First impulse. Now that you've done all this work and you've gained this objectivity, you've used this character to work out something about yourself. For you as an individual, for where you are in your life right now, what meaning does this story have for you? What lesson might you take away? What does it tell you about life that you believe? First impulse. So for example, Mr. H jumped ahead with this and just said intuitively, knowledge is power. And there's probably some more to that there. There's another part of that makes it a little sticky. So what might that be? Knowledge is power because
understanding the world allows you to live successfully in it.
Good.
And understand others.
Nice. And so it's a positive lesson. Some are cautionary tales. Don't sign until you read the fine print. That's a cautionary lesson, more like a Faustian tale. Or it could be an uplifting lesson. So what do you think? What are the meanings of your stories? First draft. Oliver, I'm curious to hear what yours is.
I don't know, like, accept yourself and do the right thing.
Because why?
Because, like, you are, like, who you are regardless of, like, what other people, what role other people cast you in.
Beautiful. A Shakespearean thought, to thine own self be true. What else? Dylan.
Why others fear what they don't understand.
Fantastic. That's the beginning of a meaningful sentence, but it's a topic. So what do you believe about that topic? What perspective do you have?
People fear what they don't understand without making an effort to understand it.
Okay, so it's a cautionary tale. Or has a bit of a negative aspect to it, about it's slightly misanthropic. Yeah. Good. Pua, why is this story meaningful for you?
It shows that you should be appreciative of what you have because it can disappear very fast.
Beautiful. Be appreciative of what you have because it can disappear very fast. When you say that, does something move? Do you feel a little? That means you're hitting the nerve. That means you're moving towards it and you're in that creative process. If you say the meaningful sentence and you feel it in your body, that means it's true. And you did that work. So congratulations.